Our law company has been active in several procedures, individual procedures, concerning human rights violations by the Turkish state, successfully. However, this individual approach, how important it may be, is not enough. We also need a more structural approach, and we need to share the knowledge. We need to make the public more aware of these violations of human rights. That's why, with reports from universities, with witnesses, we have created this tribunal with very experienced, independent judges, high reputed judges who will give their opinion and they will decide as judges do. And by this we hope that the large public will be more aware of what's happening. And more people know, the better, hoping that one day we can stop these violations of human rights. The Turkish tribunal is not an official tribunal, it's what we call a people's tribunal. The legitimacy of such a tribunal depends, of course, from the judges, from the members. Our judges have a very high reputation. They are independent people, experienced, with a big knowledge of human rights, and most of all, really independent.
In this case, this tribunal is a typical body constituted under the principle of what is known as a universal jurisdiction, where when there is a strong feeling or a presumption or a body of information that lends itself to the need to see what applies under international human rights law, information is produced in the shape of reports, in the shape of witnesses, and put before the tribunal. The tribunal then examines these allegations and these reports and these individuals. It will also ask the government concerned, of course, to submit its point of view and its vision of these allegations. And on the basis of that procedure, the tribunal will then get together and examine the various legal provisions that would have been cited, on one hand, the information on the other, and deliver its verdict on that situation. The idea is to enable a better understanding and a better hope for action, in this case in regard to the situation of human rights in Turkey, as alleged in the various documentation before the tribunal.
Universal Declaration of Human Rights forms the legal framework for international law to underpin freedoms for all. The independent judges of the Turkey Tribunal have used this law to forensically examine the large body of evidence that exposes how the human rights in Turkey and those fundamental freedoms have been seriously eroded. The role of the International Observatory of Human Rights within the Turkey Tribunal is to bring these findings to light through debate, media, and recording the voices of witnesses so that the history of the human rights violations that they've suffered can be heard.
Significant reform effort with some reduction in torture came as part of the European integration process, which included rule of law reforms. The first decade of 2000s was time for great hopes, when in 2003 the policy of zero tolerance towards torture was declared. However, the last coup d'etat attempt in 2016 failed and triggered a counter-reaction, and torture became more brutal, indiscriminate, widespread in Turkey, especially against...
Another man who spoke out about his abduction is a man called Gökhan Türkmen. And in February of 2020, he spoke during a court hearing about how he had been abducted. And he spoke in great detail to a lawyer about it, and the Ankara Bar Association produced a report about that. We also spoke as Human Rights Watch to his wife, and heard more details of the reprisals against the family for speaking out. And his wife is now in prison. Her conviction for association with the Gulen movement was upheld very quickly. Potentially, her whole case was speeded up, the case against her, as a form of reprisal for speaking about her husband's case.
İnsanları açlığa mahkum ediyorlar. Kadınlara çalışma izni verilmiyor. KHK ile atılan kadınlara, erkekleri çalışma izni verilmiyor. Kadınlar birbirine yardımcı olduğu için onlar terörist ilan ediliyor. Gözaltına alınıyor. Avrupa Birliği bunlara nasıl böyle sessiz kalabiliyor? Benim bunu aklım almıyor. Evet, Türkiye'de işkence var. Çocuklara da işkence yapılıyor, kadınlara da işkence yapılıyor, erkeklere de işkence yapılıyor. Lütfen artık görmezden gelmeyin. Yaşananları kulaklarınızı tıkamayın ve görmezden gelmeyin artık.
Yapmak istediğim ve Avrupa İnsan Hakları Alt Komisyonu yapmak istediğim, insan haklarını bizim Türkiye ile olan ilişkilerimizin kalbine oturtmaktır. Türkiye ile ilişkilerimizdeki odak noktamız insan hakları olmalıdır. Ve bizler komitede bunun üzerine çalışmaya devam edeceğiz. Türkiye'de insan hakları üzerine çalışmaya devam edeceğiz. Tabii ki de sivil toplumu desteklemeye devam edeceğiz. Onlara karşı yapılanları konusunda sesimizi duyuracağız. Ama bence yapmamız gereken üye devletlerimize, Belçika'ya, Fransa'ya, Almanya'ya şunu istemeliyiz. İnsan hakları artık Türkiye ile ve diğer ülkelerle olan ilişkilerimizin kalbine oturtmalıyız.
The number of jailed journalists is 175. Number of wanted journalists is 167. 94 journalists are arrested. 81 is convicted. Most of those convicted are from the Gülen movement, which Erdogan accuses of staging the coup, and its accusation the Gülen movement has denied. The second largest group of the jailed journalists is our Kurdish colleagues. The feud between Zaman and the government started with the largest corruption case in Republican history in December 2013. While Zaman insisted on deepening of the investigations, the then Prime Minister, Erdogan, called the investigations a coup attempt on his democratically elected government.
To report on what is happening on Turkey, judicial independence and access to justice is a very important contribution for the analysis and description of what is happening in that beautiful and fantastic country that doesn't deserve hundreds of judges and lawyers harassed, persecuted, imprisoned, or killed. A combination of anti-terror legislation with some vague definitions in the Turkish criminal code and biased interpretation made by some Turkish judges and prosecutors allows the criminalization of harmless acts and even the exercise of fundamental rights, as it is mentioned in your report.
Malumunuz 15 Temmuz süreci sadece 15 Temmuz günü yaşanmadı. Onun bir de öncesi var. Öncesinde hizmet hareketine sistemli bir şekilde saldırılar başlamıştı.
Yani Türkiye 2015 yılından bu yana çok korkunç bir atmosferin içerisinde.
News, as breaking news, that approximately 3,000 judges and prosecutors were dismissed. So there were lists on almost every website. It was shared with the media. I learned that some colleagues of mine, especially in eastern part of Turkey, had already been arrested.
In terms of what Turkey did and what Ankara did following July 2016, was that they very rapidly escalated into a campaign of renditions, of disappearances, and of returning people to Turkey. This began as early as August 2016, the first case that we have from Turkey in this count, from Bulgaria. Case of a man named Abdullah Buyuk, who had already left Turkey prior to the coup attempt. And in his case, the Prime Minister of Bulgaria, in fact, spoke on the record and said that it came right up to the edge of legality.
Diktatörler, despotlar ilk başta devletin yargı organlarını teslim alırlar. Neredeyse yargı mensuplarının yarısı devletten ihraç edildi. Kalanlar da siyasal iktidara teslim oldu.
Bu 15 Temmuz olaylarından sonra 2 hafta sonra iş yerinde polisler tarafından gözaltına alındım. Orada bizi gözaltına aldıkları andan itibaren bize şiddet uygulamaya başladılar. İş yerinde bizi işte dövmeye başladılar. Bu işkenceleri yaparken işkence yapacakları insanları spor salonundan çıkarıp başka bir alana götürüp orada işkence yapıyorlardı.
Unfortunately, we heard my sister passed away in the prison. Accused the supporting terrorist organization, but no meaning. During this time, unfortunately, she died because of the regular health service is denied or not properly given to her.
Kardeşim Kemal Korkut 2017 Nevruz'unda Ahmet'te alana girmeye çalışırken polisler tarafından öldürüldü. Ve dava cezasızlıkla sonuçlandı. Cezasızlıkla sonuçlanan bütün mahkemeler yeni cinayetlere gebedir.
Etrafınızdaki insanların tamamı size düşman nazarıyla bakıyor. Bir nevi sivil ölüme mahkum edilmişsiniz ve size hayat hakkı tanınmıyor.
Yüz binlerce insanı FETÖ'cü, DHKP'ci, PKK'ci diye sürmenin, zulüm etmenin, kanun hükmünde kararnamelerle onları aşından, maaşından, işinden etmenin, yüz binlercesini mevcut var olan saydıkları siyasal yapıların akrabaları, dostlarıdır diye mağdur etmenin, onların banka hesaplarını bile engellemenin, ahlakla, vicdanla, İslamiyetle, insan haklarıyla izah edilir bir yanı yok.
The lawyers were acting on behalf of the Gülenist movement, an opposition movement in Turkey. The government has accused of organizing the so-called coup attempt of 2016. It's part of an ongoing crackdown against Gülenists, a so-called investigation into terrorism. The arrests took place very soon after the president said in a speech that lawyers deemed to have links with terrorist organizations could be disbarred. The list is very long. Lawyers represent human rights activists, they represent journalists, they represent academics, members of civil society, women, students, activists. This is an authoritarian government that has no respect for human rights. And in order to maintain a strong grip on power, Erdogan finds that it's necessary to continually repress and crack down on dissent, as well as lawyers who represent those dissenters.
I hope Turkey Tribunal will help this reality to be known by everyone in judicial area.
Uluslararası dayanışmaya çok önem veriyorum ve bu tribünalin de bu yargılama tarzının bize destek olacağını düşünüyorum. Çünkü biz bu mahkemeye bu coğrafyada yaşadıklarımızı anlatıyoruz ve bizim sadece talebimiz şu: Türkiye altına imza attığı uluslararası sözleşmelere uygun davransın.
Biz artık yeni cinayetlerin işlenmesini istemiyoruz ve adalet istiyoruz.
We need justice for everybody, even somebody under the injustice behavior. Yes, we have to define them.
Everything in terms of severe abuses of power by this government should be put on record and to be remembered.
Bütün imkanım olsa bütün dünyaya Türkiye'de yapılan şu anda bu zulümlerin ne kadar ağır olduğunu ve işkenceler insanların öldüğünün duyurulması gerektiğine inanıyorum. Ve bu işkenceyi yapanların da bu işkencelerin kendilerinin yanına kar kalmayacağını bilmelerini istiyorum.
We observe that such tribunals play an important role as an alternative justice forum to allow victims to speak out, to draw international attention to their plight, and put pressure on states to stop persecuting human rights defenders and respect human rights. So these tribunals are important because they can influence public opinion, the United Nations and other international bodies to take action. And in that sense, because the persecution in Turkey is so ongoing and so ferocious, we believe that the Turkey Tribunal is an important forum to fight against this persecution.
First of all, the rules of procedure do not exclude to have a second or a third tribunal in 2022, 2023. That will depend on the reports that can be made and will depend on the resources we can find. Anyhow, after the first tribunal, we will not stop. We have the possibility, we think, to go to the International Criminal Court. We are now really working on that. We are finding some possibilities and we think we should do that. There is the possibilities within the European Convention of Human Rights, with European Court of Human Rights, where states could make a complaint that we feed. And there are several procedures already pending before, for instance, United Nations, and we will feed them. We will strengthen these cases. Anyhow, it doesn't stop. We will go on until justice is done.